My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 31. And this is the story I've never told anyone. I call it, I dropped off a package. She opened in her pajamas and said, "Finally, you're here." It started on a Thursday morning that smelled of rain. The kind of morning where the sky looked like it had been smudged with charcoal, and the streets reflected everything like a black mirror. I was working deliveries then, a side job I swore would only last a few months, but had stretched into 2 years. My real dream was photography. I used to think I'd travel the world capturing faces, cities, and secrets, but somewhere between bills and broken promises, I'd ended up wearing the same gray uniform, scanning barcodes, and leaving boxes on doorsteps. That morning, my supervisor handed me an oddly small package with a bright red urgent sticker. The address was a townhouse on Willow Street, one of those quiet corners of the city where everything feels like it's holding its breath. I knocked. No answer. I was about to leave the package on the mat when I heard quick footsteps. The door swung open, and there she was, barefoot, in pale blue pajamas that hung loosely from her frame, and hair the color of autumn leaves, wild from sleep. She looked at me, not like a stranger looks at a stranger, but like she'd been expecting me all her life. Her lips curled into the smallest, strangest smile, and she whispered, almost breathlessly, "Finally, you're here." I froze. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in the soft, haunting way that sticks to your ribs, but because something in her voice felt wrong. Like those words weren't just about the package. Yeah, I muttered, glancing at my scanner. "I've got a delivery for, Emily," she said quickly. "It's for me." Her hand brushed mine as she took the box, and I swear, for a second, the world narrowed to that point of contact. Cold fingertips, trembling slightly. I should have walked away. I should have nodded, said, "Have a good day," and left. But something in her eyes caught me. Something lonely. Something almost desperate. "Are you new on this route?" she asked, leaning on the doorframe, as if she wanted to keep me there just a moment longer. "Yeah," I lied. I wasn't new. I'd been on this route for months. But something told me she didn't want the truth. She tilted her head, like she was studying me. "You look tired. Rough morning." I hesitated. "Something like that." She smiled again, but there was sadness in it. "Well, you're here now. That's what matters." There it was again. "You're here now." Like she'd been waiting for me, not the package. I turned to leave, but before I could, she asked, "What's your name?" I almost didn't answer. We weren't supposed to. Rules, boundaries, professionalism, all those things my boss drilled into us. But something about Emily made rules feel smaller. "Ethan," I said. She repeated it softly, like she was tasting the word. "Ethan." The rest of the day passed like a blur, but her voice stuck to me. The way she'd said finally, "You're here," kept replaying in my head. By the time I got home, I'd almost convinced myself I was overthinking. People say weird things when they're half awake, right? But the next morning, I found another small package. Same handwriting on the label, same red urgent sticker. Addressed to Emily, Willow Street. I knocked again. This time, she opened the door faster, like she'd been standing right behind it. "You came back," she said. I laughed nervously. "Well, yeah, another delivery." Her eyes flickered to the package, then back to me. "Do you want to come in? Just for a minute? It's cold out." Every alarm in my head went off. We weren't supposed to go inside. But then she looked at me. Not pleading, not manipulative, just lonely. And loneliness is louder than rules. Inside, her townhouse was strange. It wasn't messy, but it wasn't lived in either. Bare walls. A single chair by the window. No photos. No family clutter. "Sorry," she said, noticing my glance. "I just moved in." Sort of." "Sort of?" I asked. She shrugged, taking the package, running her fingers over the tape like she didn't actually want to open it. "It doesn't matter," she murmured, but I could tell it did. We talked about nothing and everything. Her favorite coffee, black, too bitter for me. The fact she hadn't slept well. The way she used to write, used to like it belonged to a different version of her. And then she asked, almost casually, "Do you live alone?" The question shouldn't have meant anything, but the way she said it, quiet, careful, felt like more than curiosity. "I do," I admitted. She smiled faintly, then whispered, "Me too." That night I couldn't sleep. Something about Emily's house, no, Emily herself, had left me uneasy. Not scared. Not yet. Just that feeling like standing too close to the edge of a rooftop, knowing one wrong step could change everything. The third day, there was no package for her, but I drove to Willow Street anyway. And when she opened the door, this time in a faded sweatshirt, she didn't look surprised. "You came back," she said again, like she'd known I would. The third day I went back. I told myself it was just to check if a package had been misplaced, but I knew I was lying. Emily stood in the doorway, sweatshirt sleeves pulled over her hands, and for the first time, she didn't smile. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. I hesitated. Something about her voice was different, less warm, more guarded. Still, I stepped inside. Her house was the same. Walls too bare, furniture too sparse, like someone had been trying to erase a life rather than build one. But this time, there was something else. A photo frame face down on the windowsill. I don't know why I noticed it, but I did. While she disappeared into the kitchen to make tea, I picked it up. It was a man, maybe late 30s, dark hair, arms wrapped around Emily like they belonged there. The glass was cracked across his face. I put it down fast when I heard her footsteps. "Who's he?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to the frame. For a second, I thought she might throw it. Instead, she said softly, "My husband." Something in my chest dropped. "Oh," I said. "I didn't realize you." "I don't," she interrupted. Then quieter, "Not anymore." The room felt colder. She handed me tea, fingers trembling slightly, and sat across from me. "He left," she said, staring into the steam. "Or maybe I left first. I don't even know anymore." Her words were sharp, but her eyes weren't. Her eyes looked hollow. I wanted to ask more, but something told me not to. The fourth day, I didn't wait for an excuse. I drove to Willow Street like it was magnetic. Emily opened the door before I knocked, almost like she'd been listening for me. "You're here," she whispered. This time, there was no smile, just relief. Inside, she talked faster, like she was afraid silence might crush her. About her husband, how they'd fought about everything and nothing, how he'd stopped seeing her. Not literally, but in that way people stop looking at the person they promised to love. She laughed once, bitter and sharp. "You know what's worse than being yelled at? Being invisible." I didn't know what to say, so I said the wrong thing. "Are you divorced?" She froze. "No," she said. "Not yet." There was a shadow behind that yet. Something dark and unfinished. That night I couldn't sleep again. Not because of Emily, but because of the dream I had. In it, I stood outside her townhouse, knocking, but the door wouldn't open. When it finally did, she was standing there. But it wasn't her. It was the man from the photo, and his face was cracked like the glass. The fifth day, I told myself I wouldn't go. I lasted until noon. When I got there, her front door was ajar. I froze on the porch, pulse hammering. "Emily?" I called. No answer. I stepped inside. The living room was quiet, still too clean, too empty, except for the packages. There were more now, at least 6, stacked neatly in the corner, all unopened. I stared at them. Same handwriting, same urgent stickers. Why hadn't she opened them? "Ethan?" Her voice came from behind me, soft, startled. I turned. She was standing there in a thin sweater, her eyes wide like she'd been caught. "You weren't supposed to see those," she whispered. "Why not?" I asked. She stepped closer, fingers clutching the hem of her sleeve. "Because," her voice trembled, "because if I open them, it's real." "What's real?" She didn't answer. Instead, she picked up one of the boxes, held it against her chest like it was fragile, and whispered, "Do you ever feel like your whole life is waiting for something? Or someone?" Her eyes found mine. "And then one day, they're standing at your door?" I should have walked away right then. But I didn't. I stayed. Because for reasons I couldn't explain, I didn't want to be anywhere else. That night, I told my sister about Emily. Or almost. We were on the phone, and she was asking why I sounded distracted, why I hadn't been visiting Mom as much. I almost said it. There's this woman. But I didn't. Instead, I lied. Work's been busy. The 6th day it happened. The thing that changed everything. When I got to Willow Street, a car I didn't recognize was parked in the driveway. A black sedan. The driver's door was open. And there, standing in the yard, was the man from the photo. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low, controlled, but sharp like a blade under the skin. Before I could answer, Emily stepped onto the porch. Her face went pale when she saw him. "Ryan," she whispered. The man, Ryan, looked from her to me, and in that split second I felt it. The weight of something I didn't understand pressing down on me. Like I'd stepped into a story that had been written long before I arrived, and didn't realize until that moment that it wasn't just Emily who had secrets. Ryan's stare felt like it could pin me to the ground. He was calm, but the kind of calm that felt like standing on ice just before it cracks. "Who are you?" he repeated, his voice colder this time. I opened my mouth, but Emily stepped forward. "Ryan, stop," she said quickly, almost pleading. Her tone wasn't sharp. It wasn't angry. It was afraid. Ryan's jaw tightened. He turned his gaze on her, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his expression, hurt. "You didn't answer my calls," he said, his voice breaking for just a second. Emily's shoulders sagged. "You shouldn't be here." "I shouldn't be here?" He laughed bitterly. "Emily, I live here." The words hit like a slap. Live here. My stomach dropped. I glanced at the bare walls, the unopened packages, the silence that had seemed so heavy. And then, the truth hit me. She hadn't just moved in. She'd been staying here alone while he was gone. But this house, this life, it wasn't only hers. Ryan's eyes cut back to me. "Who are you?" I swallowed. "I'm just the delivery guy." Emily flinched at that, like my words had hurt her. Ryan stared, his hands curling into fists at his sides. But then he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile, right? The delivery guy. The silence between them was suffocating. Finally, Ryan stepped closer to her. "Are you really doing this again?" he asked, voice low, trembling. Emily shook her head. "It's not like that, isn't it?" His voice cracked, louder this time. "God, Emily, you disappear. You stop answering. I find you in this house with..." He cut himself off. But the unspoken words hung in the air. I should have left. I should have turned around, walked back to my truck, and driven away. But I didn't, because Emily was staring at me. Not at him, her eyes wide, pleading, as if she wanted me to stay. "Ryan," she said quietly, "you don't understand." "Then explain it," he snapped. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, almost to herself, "Finally, you're here." Something in Ryan's face changed. His anger faltered, replaced by something worse, realization. "You've said that before," he said. Emily froze. His voice dropped to a whisper, sharp and shaking. "You said that to him, didn't you?" The room felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Emily took a step back, her breath quickening. "It's not what you think," she said. Ryan stared at her and then at me. And in that moment I saw it. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the cracks in both of them. Then he turned and walked out. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just the sound of the black sedan pulling away. The silence after was unbearable. Emily sank into the chair by the window, covering her face with her hands. "Emily?" I said softly. She didn't look up. For the first time, I felt like I'd stepped into something I wasn't meant to touch. A marriage broken but not gone. A woman lonely but not free. A man angry but still in love. I wanted to ask her, why me? Why the unopened packages? Why finally you're here? But when she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Ethan, I don't think I know how to be alone." Her words landed like a weight in my chest, because suddenly I understood. She hadn't been waiting for the packages. She'd been waiting for someone, anyone, to fill the silence, and I'd stepped into that role without even realizing it. I stayed a little longer that day, not because I wanted to be the hero, not because I thought I could fix her, but because walking away felt cruel. When I finally left, the sun was setting. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you've been carrying someone else's secrets. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, I wasn't dreaming about Emily. I was dreaming about myself, standing at her door, knocking, waiting. Weeks passed. Sometimes I went back. Sometimes I didn't. The packages stopped coming. The black sedan came and went. And slowly, I learned to let go. But every now and then, I think about that day, the door opening, her smile, the way she whispered finally, "You're here." And here's what I've learned. Sometimes people aren't waiting for you. They're waiting for what you represent. An escape, a distraction, a flicker of hope in a life that feels too quiet. And sometimes you step into that role for a moment. But moments aren't forever. I don't know if Emily ever found what she was looking for, but I know this. When you become someone's finally, you better make sure you're ready for what that means. Because sometimes it's more than you can carry.